Humans live from, on, and with water. Rivers, canals, lake regions. They have shaped our culture for centuries. They are a place to live, transport arteries, and sources of energy. On 5 journeys, we discover the waterways of Europe. We venture upstream on watercourses broad and narrow in canoes, boats, and ships. Along the way, new projects for the future of water in Europe. Today, the water takes us to the south of France. Starting in the Camargue, we travel up the Rhône, the most voluminous river in the country, past Arles, Avignon and Châteauneuf-du-Pape. The route then follows the wild Ardèche into France's Massif central. They are the symbol of the Camargue, pink flamingos. The Rhône Delta, France's largest alluvial plain, is an important resting station for them. As they search for food, the birds congregate in large colonies in the shallow water, which offers protection against predators. They feed on small fish, mollusks and crustaceans that contain the pigment carotene, and which gives the birds their pink plumage. Over the centuries, the Camargue formed out of the alluvial sediments of the Rhône. Debris carried by the river out of the Alps forms the foundation of this coastal region. The result is a world between land and the sea, in which salt water and fresh water mix and create a unique biosphere. Humans, too, were quick to recognize the richness of this patch of land. Locks, canals, and irrigation systems have done much to change the Camargue. Salt production in large ponds known as Étangs, however, is on the wane. The French state has purchased much of the land in order to restore it to its original state. Marc Thibault heads up a team of scientists overseeing the process.
It's 40 grams of salt per litre. That's almost as much as in seawater. It is important to monitor the salt content in inland waters because it allows us to understand how animals and plants can live here.
The water in this part of the Camargue was highly controlled, natural cycles repeatedly interrupted by locks, and the animal world adversely impacted by human intervention.
Ces aménagements ont eu des conséquences très importantes. Il y a aujourd'hui beaucoup.
These arrangements had a big impact here. The exchange between the sea and the delta had become quite limited. That impacted the migration of fish. They have a hard time getting into and out of the Étangs. But now we finally have the chance in this area, which is now state property, to re-establish the exchange between the sea and the inland waters.
The wind-whipped landscape of the Camargue is dotted with wetlands. It is home to a rather sparse world of plants, which must be able to tolerate salt and water to flourish here. The region is also known for its black cattle, which are bred for the French version of bullfighting. In contrast to the Spanish corrida, however, the course camarguaise is not fatal for the animals. The white Camargue horse is a distinct breed only found here, robust and adapted to the region's raw climate. Like wild horses, the animals live in herds, but belong to the cattle breeders who use them for their work. We've come to the Étangs du Vacaré, the largest of the many lagoons in the Camargue. A group of scientists is monitoring the restoration of the wetland. Biologist Delphine Nicolas and her team are looking at how changes in the étangs affect the fish population.
We're conducting scientific fishery management here. We're presently measuring and sorting our catch. Oh, this is a lovely stickleback.
Today, the scientists caught a large number of mussels, crustaceans and eels in the former salterns. Every catch is weighed, measured and entered in long lists. Over a period of several months, Delphine Nicolas expects to gain a good overview of the changes to the ecosystem due to the restoration measures.
Every month we install different fishing implements at different points in the area.
11,08. Alors, ligne latérale, oui. Contraste, oui.
Then we fish around the clock for 3 days. We determine what we've caught, sort everything, and measure the length and weight of the fish. Then we release them. The species are well adapted to the fluctuating salinity as well as the temperatures. They are brackish water species and are considered very ecologically valuable. They can withstand strong fluctuations in salinity and temperature. That means that we have a low diversity of populations, so just a few species, but a great abundance of those that are here.
The study has yet to produce clear results, but the early signs point to a recovery of life in the étangs.
The Camargue is well known as a nature reserve, a sanctuary for biodiversity. We have a lot of wild species here, including many different birds. But it is also a landscape that has been starkly impacted by human structures and activities. It's really the paradox of the Camargue. A very wild environment, but also highly shaped by humans.
A pied avocet searches for food. They and many other species can be observed up close in their natural habitat at the Pont de Gau Ornithological Park. The cattle egrets have just had offspring. The elegant little egret is at home here as well. Invasive species like the South American coipu also live on the shores here. A bit further towards the Rhône Delta, the Palissade estate encompasses over 700 hectares and is today entirely dedicated to landscape conservation. Except for the dikes that protect the lower Camargue against sea and floodwaters, the forces of nature have always held sway here. It is home to a diverse range of flora and fauna. Here the Rhône still enjoys its natural state, but further north it soon displays a different character. The journey now ventures upstream along the Rhône, 30 kilometers to the next city. Where the Camargue ends, there begins Provence. Arles takes shape in the distance. In ancient times, the city was called Ardèche, on the marsh. It was founded by the Gauls and became a Roman military colony in 46 BC. The historic centre lies on the east bank of the Rhône. In the Middle Ages, Arles became a bishopric. Today, a vibrant small city, Arles was long an important regional trading centre. Though it may not be apparent to modern residents, nearly all larger cities in the world were originally founded on the water. With just about 50,000 inhabitants today, centuries ago, Arles was an important transport hub. We now head out of the city, travelling upstream in a woodcutter. This large waterway is a European north-south axis and remains an important trade route to this day. At the river port of Arles, more than 500,000 tons of goods are shipped annually, and the trend is upwards. The vegetation along the banks soon grows denser. Île de Saxy Island was once a hideout for Rhône pirates. Today, the riverbanks are a retreat for stressed-out city dwellers. A massive effort to develop the river began in 1933 as part of a gigantic infrastructure program to benefit transport, agriculture, and energy production. Since then, the Rhône has been navigable throughout the year for push convoys of up to 4,500 tons. A waterway whose industrial perfection is reminiscent of an autobahn. The Rhône Valley is also a climate corridor in which Mediterranean weather and polar influences meet. Then, Avignon, the city of popes. A city that continues to draw on its compelling history. We pass what is inarguably the most famous bridge in Provence, Pont-Saint-Bénézet, familiar from the song Sur le Pont d'Avignon. Built in the 12th century, the bridge originally had 22 arches, but today only 4 remain, due to flood damage. The old town is dominated by the Pope's Palace, one of the largest medieval Gothic buildings in Europe. When the French Pope Clément V refused to move to Rome, Avignon was declared his rightful seat, and the city became the grandest construction site of the century. The result, the palace and the old town have remained tourist magnets to this day. The transport concept is modern. The city centre is largely car-free, with electric buses serving the pedestrian zones in their stead. We continue upstream on the Rhône. On the left bank lies the Île de la Barthelasse, one of the biggest river islands in Europe. It is 700 hectares in size, part cultivated and part wild. Hidden on the western bank is a 30-hectare pristine floodplain forest. In some places, it is an all but impenetrable thicket. Gilles Blanc is a regular presence here. The conservationist observes the flora and fauna and records every change.
When I was 15, 20 years old and we talked about environmental protection and saving species, practically no one listened. Well, we are standing here today and that shows that the people are listening now. There is a consciousness. That's very positive. The other side is that the downward spiral continues. The economy motors on and we produce more and more. It's a race against time.
The riverside forest on Île de la Barthelasse is a true natural treasure, but also serves as a floodplain outside the city gates. When floods occur, the river can spread out in a natural way here.
When we leave a river like the Rhône enough space, when we don't fight against flooding, the groundwater is replenished and cleansed. But when we have a channeled, closed river, the water rushes down to the sea and can't seep into the ground. If we create open spaces and places on the river at which it's able to spill over the banks during high water, the groundwater is automatically replenished. It's fantastic and practically free. Of course, you can't do that everywhere, but in some places it is possible. And those would also be natural spaces where birds, turtles, otters and beavers could live. This is the challenge. In the long run, we must share more again, and that means all of us together, not one profession against another, but everyone together.
The threats to natural habitats, such as on the Île de la Barthelasse, are not visible to everyone. At times it requires a trained eye to recognize the threats to the native flora and fauna. And it's not always human activities around the water that are directly responsible.
We are standing next to a plant called the bastard indigo bush. It is an invasive species originally from North America. It produces a toxin that impedes the growth of other plants. The natural vegetation is essentially suffocated by it, and the area becomes very monotone. That has a strong effect on biodiversity, perhaps even greater than that of re-engineering the rivers. Those changes can be remedied, but we have no chance against the bastard indigo bush.
Of all French rivers, the Rhône has experienced the most substantial engineering measures. Its banks were diked starting in the mid-19th century. The waterway was tapped as a source of renewable power generation on a major scale. Power plants like Sauveterre could supply entire large cities with energy, albeit at the expense of intact ecosystems. Today, Romain Brousson, environmental officer at the Compagnie Nationale du Rhône, is working on technologies aimed at bringing life back to the river.
Historically, there was a great need for electricity in France, particularly for industry, in order to develop the country. And into the 1960s and 1970s, in this phase of growth, the main focus was on the economy. Toward the end of the 1970s, the environment began to play a role in legislation all around Europe. People became more and more concerned about nature, and that is when environmental protection efforts began, the restoration of habitats, and that involved the Rhône as well.
Major river engineering measures often break up existing habitats. Fish like eels have to migrate for their species to survive, but dams are insuperable obstacles for them. Fish ladders are intended to help. Cameras and computers are monitoring whether the project is a success.
This also shows us which fish pass by here, how many, which species, their sizes, and even their weight can be determined. All of this is done by a camera that is filming all the time.
The surveys have shown that the migration of the eels and other species has indeed rebounded.
The special thing about this system is that parts are transparent and work in both directions, upstream and downstream. That also helps us learn more about the fish.
Beaucaire, further south, also produces renewable energy from hydropower. After a sharp decline in fish populations, they experimented with support structures for the underwater world. The fish ladder in Beaucaire is a steep affair. To enable the eels to climb it, the ramp was equipped with brushes that give the fish something to hold. Once at the top, they land in a water tank. Employees of the Compagnie Nationale du Rhône empty it at regular intervals. Buckets and plastic basins serve as transport containers for the young eels. Now we venture further upstream by car, on a small spit of land that separates the Rhône from its tributary, the Gardon. The idea is to release the eels at a safe distance from the hydropower plant. What would appear to be a rather elaborate method for bringing a few fish upstream also revives a cycle that had been interrupted for a long time. But before the eels can go back into the water, the length, weight and age of every animal is recorded for science and statistics. Meanwhile, a narcotic in the bucket calms the eels so they don't flop out.
128 AG1, 154.
Now the eels are released, in the hope that as many of the young eels as possible will make it to the North Sea and back. It may not be natural, but it is perhaps a compromise between the needs of our civilization and those of an intact environment.
There's always this term wild, but what does a wild river actually mean? There are people in every country in the world who live on rivers. And suddenly the river gets use, its banks are settled and built on, infrastructure is created. So the wild, meandering river becomes cultivated by the hand of humanity.
The wild, natural Rhône reveals itself a bit further upstream. In the past, many curvy sections were cut off as the main channel was straightened. Some have long since dried out, while others are gradually being turned into nature reserves. An oxbow lake south of Camargue was separated in 1976. This patch of nature is now called Plein d'eau de Revestidou and is a small paradise. Île Vieille, Old Island, is the name of the plot of land that separates the modern from the old river landscape, which shows its natural face here. The area is rich in animal and plant species, and just how important wetlands can be for river landscapes is abundantly clear. The journey takes us to the Châteauneuf-du-Pape wine-growing region, known for its diversity of grape varieties and chalky soils. Crowned by a castle ruin of the popes of Avignon, the town, visible from afar, sits atop a hill 2 kilometers from the Rhône. The Brunel family have been wine growers since the 17th century. Their home, the Château de la Gardine, was bought in 1945. Today, its cellars house the results of many decades' worth of work. Patrick Brunel and his people grow grapes on 52 hectares of land. The quality of their wines and the knowledge that is passed down from one generation to the next have made the estate one of the most important in the region.
Many quality wines do originate in the vicinity of rivers, such as the Bordeaux, the wines of the Loire, and ours here. It is believed that the slopes of the river valleys have a greater diversity of soils, which in some cases can differ from one bank to the other. Take Châteauneuf-du-Pape, for example. The Mourvèdre grape is a variety that really likes to grow on the water, especially when the mornings are foggy and a bit cool. The masses of water also ensure a balanced temperature.
We continue further upstream. The Rhône transport route crosses paths with the motorway and the TGV high-speed train here. A few kilometers to the north, Pont-Saint-Esprit, the gateway to the Ardèche. The town lies at the foot of the Massif central, through which the Ardèche River wends its way. Here in Pont-Saint-Esprit, the wild waterway joins the Rhône. The roughly 900-meter-long stone arch bridge was built around the year 1300 and is the oldest existing one of its kind over the Rhône. Our route now follows the Ardèche to the left, upstream into the mountains. Over thousands of years, the river has eaten into the karst rock of the Massif central, and thus, in its lower course, formed the 30-kilometer-long Gorges de l'Ardèche. Because the soils here can only absorb small amounts of water, severe high water and flooding are a regular occurrence. The spectacular landscape draws holiday makers every year, and particularly water sports enthusiasts. One family with deep local roots is among the pioneers in tapping the sporting potential of the Ardèche. The Pêchiers seem to have been born with their feet in the water, winning countless trophies for their homeland in the sport of kayaking. Father Claude Pêchier took the kayak single world championship back in 1969.
It's truly a passion, or rather a symbiosis. For us, the river is part of our inner equilibrium. We have to be close to the river, hear it, smell it. It's very important to us.
His son, Benoit, is an Olympic gold medalist and trains the French national kayaking team. Even in their free time, they paddle the gorge in canoes time and again.
It's the story of our family. I started thanks to my father. At first, I was a bit reserved because it was not easy for me to get close to the water. But when I really got into it, it was so much fun.
His younger brother, Nicolas, also kayaks on the World Championship level.
Everything always brings us back to the water. It's the thing we always hold on to. In winter, in summer, actually always, everything in this region revolves around this river, the Ardèche. The Ardèche is my great love. I have wonderful but also difficult moments with it when it is really running high. And it changes endlessly, day after day.
The Ardèche is exactly what people find enthralling about Waterways, an untamed force of nature. This is especially evident in the high season, when the tourists come in droves. Now, in spring, the numbers are modest. But the famed stone arch Pont d'Ardèche in particular, the symbol of the region, is a mass attraction in the summer. The yearning for nature is powerful. Not least due to the rising tourism in the region, a large part of the Gorges de l'Ardèche is protected nature reserve areas, 1,500 hectares along the gorge. The aim is to protect threatened species above and under the water. Anne-Cécile Monnier is one of the people working to protect biodiversity in the Ardèche. The professional diver has been hired by the Anglers Association, Pêche de l'Ardèche, to monitor the stocks of trout.
As a river biologist, I study aquatic life in the rivers and make underwater recordings, photographs and videos. I make the great diversity under the surface of our waterways visible and public so that we can learn to appreciate these habitats.
Many divers travel to the coral reefs of the Earth's oceans to capture spectacular images. But Anne-Cécile Monnier is drawn to the exotic wonders of local waters.
I started with underwater pictures taken with a camera inside of this casing and then continued on to videos. The publication of photos and short films shows that people are truly astonished by the unknown diversity in our rivers.
Her object of study today is trout. They really ought not to be here in summer because the water is too warm for them. And yet they are here. Why? This question spurred the Anglers Association to launch a larger investigation. Divers are now regularly dispatched to determine any changes in the fish populations.
We are at an unusual place here, because in this part of the Ardèche, the water gets quite hot in summer, and trout don't like that. But thanks to inflows from the ground, which have a constant temperature of 12 to 14 degrees, the river water is cooled down here. In these basins, the trout can survive even in summer, although they are not very deep. These pools are the habitat in this section of the river.
During her dives, Anne-Cécile continually encounters crevices, passages and openings in the rock through which a current runs. The cool inflows of the Ardèche are part of a labyrinthine system of surface and subterranean waters that spans the entire region. Only a small fraction of the system is visible. The mountains are full of hidden crevices and caves through which the river runs underground as well. For instance, at the beginning of the gorge, in the Grotte Saint-Marcel, here peculiar rock formations lie hidden in eternal darkness. Far below, the tracks of the river become visible. Formations in the rock display evidence of flows, a so-called fossil river. Kilometers of passages and galleries lead below ground, which speleologist Nicolas Bransolle has explored little by little.
This cave is the largest in the Ardèche region, and it was hollowed out by a subterranean river, partly by the waters of the Ardèche of today, which also formed the famous canyon. This interconnected cave system is one of the largest in France. It's a wonderful playground for researchers who, by the way, have not yet uncovered all the secrets of the Grotte de Saint-Marcel, because there are multiple rooms here and galleries that are underwater. At 18 kilometers in length, it is the biggest underwater cave system in France that has been explored to date. Endless tours of exploration are possible here.
The Ardèche River has cut the circuitous cave system into the over 100-million-year-old limestone. Odd formations emerged in the hollow spaces, deposits of the calcium-containing water constantly dripping from the ceiling. Known as stalagmites and stalactites, the formations grow roughly 1 centimeter in 100 years.
We are in a world of rock here, and without the light of our lamps it would be pitch black. And there is this silence that envelops us. But we feel very well here. It is like a break with the outside world. There are colors, noises, smells. Of course, you hear something here too, drops of water that form the stalactites, and there are colors that are revealed by our lamps. But if you sit down here somewhere in the cave, it's almost like you're petrified. You can enjoy the silence that exists nowhere else.
The residents of the Ardèche region knew nothing of the over 50-kilometer-long world beneath their feet. It wasn't until 1838 when a hunter stumbled upon the natural entrance to the cave. But many more decades would pass before a serious effort to explore the passages, rooms and galleries was undertaken. Exploration of the portion entirely underwater began with diving expeditions in the 1980s. Today, a system of 57 kilometers in length has been explored. A small part of the grotte is also accessible to day visitors, with professional guides like Nicolas Bransolle.
Crystals have formed out of calcite here. Rainwater with carbon oxides dissolved the limestone. Above us is a 100-meter thick layer of rock. We must protect this cave's history, thousands of years in the making.
Having emerged from the subterranean world, the aquatic journey proceeds through the Massif central. From the Ardèche, the route branches into a river even wilder and more pristine. The Beaume, a perfect character contrast to the straightened Rhône. This whitewater river is just about 40 kilometers long, and its economic utility for humans minimal. Even as a waterway, it serves only expert kayakers at most. For all that, the Beaume illustrates what waterways used to look like. It is also a popular destination for fly fishers. This special style uses the weight of the fishing line and a refined casting technique to draw trout to the surface. The bait, called flies, mimic insects and are made of fur, feathers or plastic. Tying these imitation flies is a discipline in its own right and a time-consuming hobby. For brook trout, aquatic insects are the top item on the menu. The angler's flies, dancing on the surface, imitate an insect laying eggs. Beyond the technique, patience is the highest virtue of the fly fisher. Only 7% of French waterways are in a pristine condition, and that is actually quite high by international standards. The Beaume is a great example. Along the travel route through the south of France, we find the full range of what we call waterways. From the Rhône Delta in the Camargue to the perfectly engineered Rhône, the canyons of the Ardèche and the wild Beaume. The question of what types of waterways we have and need in Europe is as pressing as ever. Whether our mix of structure and nature is well balanced will continue to occupy many generations to come.